The USA is not only known for its haunted historical buildings, but also for its eerie and ghost-infested streets. From shadowy figures on quiet residential lanes to ghostly apparitions in busy urban districts, many American streets hide terrifying secrets. Some were sites of tragedy, war, or crime, leaving behind restless spirits that still wander after dark. These haunted streets prove that the country's paranormal past isn't just locked inside buildings, it lingers right out on the pavement. Now we will visit the most haunted streets in the USA. Number 1. Gay Street in New York City. Gay Street in New York City, tucked away in Greenwich Village, might look charming and peaceful, but behind its cozy exterior lies a deep, haunted history. Many locals believe it is one of the most haunted streets in the entire United States. The street is short and narrow, lined with old brick townhouses, but its past is filled with darkness, mystery, and restless spirits. One of the most chilling stories comes from a home where neighbors often report hearing piano music playing late at night, even though no one lives there. Some say it's the ghost of a 19th-century musician who took his life in despair and still plays his final composition in the silence of the night. Another nearby townhouse is said to be haunted by the spirit of a woman who died tragically in a fire over 100 years ago. Her figure is seen looking down from a second-story window, crying for help that never came. A ghostly man in a top hat, often seen walking the street after midnight, is believed to be a former banker who lost everything during the Great Depression. Witnesses say he vanishes when approached, leaving behind a sudden chill in the air. In another strange tale, people have reported the sound of loud footsteps running down the street, even when no one is there. It's believed to be the echo of a panicked escape from an old gang attack that happened during the Prohibition era. The street is also connected to the Underground Railroad, and some claim to have seen shadowy figures of fleeing slaves hiding near the stoops, especially on foggy nights. A local resident once spoke of seeing the ghost of a young boy, dressed in old clothes, sitting quietly on the stairs of a building before vanishing into thin air. One house on Gay Street is said to be cursed. Every owner has either lost someone close or gone bankrupt within years of moving in. Some believe the house carries an evil energy that feeds on misery. Despite its beauty and charm, Gay Street carries a heavy, ghostly presence. It remains one of the most mysterious and feared places in New York City, hiding darkness beneath its red brick walls. Number 2. Chartres Street in New Orleans. Chartres Street in New Orleans, Louisiana, is one of the oldest and most haunted streets in America. Located in the French Quarter, this street carries centuries of dark history, tragic events, and restless spirits. Its cobblestone paths, historic buildings, and eerie atmosphere have made it a hotspot for ghost sightings and paranormal experiences. One of the most terrifying stories comes from the Ursuline Convent, where people have reported seeing glowing red eyes in the attic windows. Legend says the attic was once used to lock away mysterious figures believed to be vampires. At night, strange scratching noises and whispers echo from the building, even when it's empty. Not far from there, a young woman in a long white gown has been seen walking slowly down the sidewalk before vanishing near a wrought iron gate. Locals believe she was a bride to be murdered on her wedding day in the 1800s. Another tale comes from a Creole townhouse where a man is often seen standing silently on the balcony. Some say he was a jealous lover who jumped to his death. To this day, people report hearing footsteps pacing the floor above, even when no one is inside. There's also an old shop where objects fly off shelves, lights flicker, and customers feel icy hands brush against them. A ghostly little girl is believed to haunt the place, giggling softly and hiding in the shadows. One chilling account tells of a man who was stabbed during a robbery in the early 1900s. Every year on the night he died, passers-by hear screams and see a shadowy figure stumbling down the street, clutching his chest. A nearby restaurant is also said to be haunted by a former chef who was poisoned by a rival. Dishes fly off tables, pots bang in the kitchen, and the scent of burnt bread fills the air when no one is cooking. Lastly, a ghostly carriage is sometimes seen racing down Chartres Street in the early morning fog. Witnesses say it disappears into thin air, leaving behind the sound of hooves and a scream that fades into the wind. Chartres Street may look beautiful, but its ghostly tales run deep and continue to terrify those who walk it after dark. Number 3. Loudoun Street in Leesburg. Loudoun Street in Leesburg, Virginia, is one of the most haunted streets in America, with a long history tied to war, death, and unexplained tragedies. This historic street, lined with old brick buildings and cobblestone paths, hides a chilling secret. Many who visit or live nearby have reported disturbing paranormal encounters that continue to this day. One of the oldest tales comes from the old courthouse on Loudoun Street, where the ghost of a Confederate soldier has been seen standing guard late at night. Witnesses say he slowly disappears into thin air as the courthouse clock strikes midnight. Not far from there, a woman in a dark shawl is seen walking toward the old market house. Locals believe she was hanged as a witch during colonial times. Her shadow has been seen moving along the walls, even when the street is empty. Another story involves a haunted bookstore where employees have reported books flying off shelves and the sound of a bell ringing with no source. They believe the spirit of a former owner, who died mysteriously inside the store, still roams the aisles looking for something lost. There's also a tale of a ghostly child who appears near a historic inn. The child is often heard crying late at night and has been seen playing with a ball that vanishes in the wind. A chilling account tells of a Civil War nurse whose ghost walks the sidewalk with a blood-stained apron. She's said to appear only to those who are grieving, and some claim she whispers warnings in their ears. Another terrifying tale is about a building that once served as a jail. Visitors have reported hearing chains dragging and voices begging for freedom long after the jail was closed and turned into a shop. Lastly, there is a dark figure in a wide-brimmed hat often spotted standing still in the alley behind Loudoun Street. No one has ever seen him move or speak, but when people approach, he vanishes without a sound. Locals believe he was an executioner who carried out secret punishments during the Revolutionary War. Loudoun Street may look like a peaceful piece of Virginia history, but its ghost stories reveal a much darker and terrifying truth. Number 4. Linden Street in Allentown. Linden Street in Allentown, Pennsylvania, appears to be just another historic residential street, but beneath its quiet charm lies a terrifying reputation. Many locals believe it is the most haunted street in the area, with ghost stories passed down for generations and paranormal events still being reported today. The old homes, churches, and narrow sidewalks seem to hold onto the spirits of those who once lived and died here. One chilling tale comes from a crumbling Victorian house where neighbors have seen a ghostly woman staring from the upstairs window. She vanished after a tragic childbirth in the 1800s, and now cries can still be heard echoing from the empty house. Not far from there, a man who was struck by lightning while fixing his roof is said to haunt the street. His figure, smoking and glowing faintly, is seen walking during summer storms. Another house was once the site of a violent family murder. Since then, the home has had several owners, all of whom reported footsteps, cold drafts, and doors slamming without cause. Some say the mirror in the hallway shows reflections that don't belong to anyone living. In a nearby alley, a young boy's spirit is often seen chasing a ball. Locals say he was hit by a carriage long ago, and now repeats his final moments, fading into nothing just before reaching the street. A nearby church is also tied to a ghostly legend. Parishioners have seen a robed figure walking down the aisle after hours, and organ music sometimes plays by itself. One janitor quit after hearing his name whispered from inside a locked confessional booth. A historic inn along Linden Street is haunted by a former maid who died in the attic. Guests have reported being woken up by footsteps and the smell of old perfume drifting through locked rooms. Finally, there is a lamplighter spirit seen near the corner of Linden and 9th Street. He wears an old vest and carries a flickering lantern. People say he appears around midnight and disappears just as the streetlights flicker. With each ghost tied to its own tragedy, Linden Street has become a place where the past refuses to rest, and every corner holds a new and chilling story. Number 5. Mechanic Street in Camden. Mechanic Street in Camden, Maine looks like a peaceful coastal lane with charming homes and quiet views of the harbor. But behind its calm appearance lies a history soaked in tragedy, mystery, and ghost stories that have earned it the title of one of the most haunted streets in the USA. Locals whisper about strange sounds, ghostly figures, and chilling encounters that still happen to this day. One of the oldest tales tells of a ghostly sea captain who appears during thick fog near the docks at the end of the street. He's said to have died in a shipwreck, and his soaked figure is seen pacing with a lantern, searching for his lost crew. In a nearby home, the spirit of a young bride who drowned on her wedding day is said to appear in a wet dress, crying silently at the top of a staircase before vanishing into the walls. An old workshop that once stood on Mechanic Street was destroyed by fire in the 1800s. People say they still smell smoke and see flickers of flame on cold nights, though nothing remains of the building. A ghostly blacksmith is said to appear near the ashes, hammering invisible iron with a glowing red face. Another haunting comes from a woman who lived alone and was found dead in her rocking chair. Since then, passersby report seeing the chair moving on its own through the window, even though the house has long been empty. One terrifying story involves a small child who drowned in the nearby harbor. Residents say they hear splashing sounds at night followed by the faint sound of a child calling for help. Another eerie tale is about a sailor's widow who still walks the street in a long black cloak. People have seen her looking out to sea before disappearing like mist. A final ghost, known only as the Bellman, is heard walking down the street at 3 a.m. ringing a handbell. Some say he once warned townsfolk of fires, but now he rings for souls. Mechanic Street may be short, but it holds a long history of sorrow and spirits, making it one of Maine's most haunted places. Number 6. Cherry Street in Vicksburg. Cherry Street in Vicksburg, Mississippi, may look like a quiet, tree-lined road filled with history and southern charm, but it holds some of the most terrifying ghost stories in the entire country. Located in a city known for Civil War battles and tragic pasts, Cherry Street is said to be haunted from one end to the other by restless spirits who refuse to move on. One of the oldest and most disturbing stories comes from a mansion where a Civil War surgeon once lived. The cries of wounded soldiers are still heard coming from the basement, and bloody handprints sometimes appear on the walls before fading away. A few doors down, an old boarding house is haunted by a woman who was found hanged in her room. Her spirit has been seen floating down the hallway in a tattered dress, and guests report waking up to the sound of choking. Near the corner of the street, a ghostly child appears holding a broken toy. Legend says he was crushed under a wagon in the 1800s, and now he wanders, looking for the mother who never found him. Another chilling tale involves a man in a Confederate uniform who is often seen standing silently in front of a church, vanishing as soon as someone gets too close. Locals believe he's guarding the graves of fallen soldiers buried nearby. One house on Cherry Street is said to be cursed. Every family that moves in experiences tragedy within months. The home has cold spots, flickering lights, and the constant sound of footsteps coming from the attic. There's also a ghostly pianist who plays late at night in one of the old homes. People outside have heard beautiful but sad music, only to find the piano covered in dust and untouched for years. Lastly, a phantom carriage is said to race down Cherry Street during storms. Witnesses hear the pounding of hooves and the creaking of wooden wheels, but nothing ever appears. Some say it's a lost soul trying to escape the siege of Vicksburg, forever caught in the moment of panic. With so many stories tied to war, heartbreak, and mystery, Cherry Street stands as one of the most haunted streets in the USA. Number 7. Cedar Street in Santa Cruz. Cedar Street in Santa Cruz, California, is one of the most haunted streets in America, hiding eerie secrets behind its sunny coastal charm. With historic homes, aging inns, and dark alleys, this street has a reputation for unexplained activity that has terrified residents and visitors for generations. Beneath the beauty lies a history filled with loss, tragedy, and ghostly encounters that refuse to be forgotten. One of the oldest houses on Cedar Street is haunted by the spirit of a woman in a flowing white dress who appears in mirrors. She was once a wealthy widow who went mad after her child drowned. To this day, her cries echo through the house, and mirrors reflect her image even when no one is nearby. Just down the road, an abandoned boarding house is home to a ghostly man who walks the halls each night, dragging a heavy suitcase. No one knows who he is, but neighbors report hearing thuds and footsteps at all hours. An old bookstore on the corner has its own haunt, the ghost of a former poet who hung himself in the attic. Employees report hearing pages turning, typewriters clicking, and soft humming from the upstairs room, even though it's been sealed for decades. One house is said to be cursed. Every pet owned by its residents has died mysteriously, and at night, strange, scratching sounds are heard from inside the walls. The local bakery has long been the center of strange occurrences. Flour spills on its own, lights flicker without warning, and the smell of burnt bread drifts through the air when the ovens are cold. Staff believe it's the ghost of a baker who died in a fire long ago. Another frightening tale involves a child's ghost seen playing in the road after midnight. He appears in the headlights of passing cars and vanishes before anyone can stop. Lastly, the ghost of a mailman is said to walk Cedar Street each morning at dawn. He's seen opening invisible mailboxes and muttering names no one recognizes. When approached, he simply disappears into thin air. With so many spirits tied to heartbreak, fire, and sorrow, Cedar Street stands as one of the most haunted places on the West Coast. Number 8. Griffith Street in Detroit. Griffith Street in Detroit, Michigan, is often described as one of the most haunted streets in the United States. Once a lively residential area, it's now a mostly abandoned and decaying stretch where silence is broken only by whispers of the past. The street carries a heavy atmosphere, and many who walk it at night report terrifying experiences that they can't explain. Locals avoid it after dark, and ghost hunters are drawn to its reputation. One of the most terrifying stories comes from a burned-out home where a family tragically died in a fire. People still hear screams and smell smoke, even though the building has long since crumbled. A glowing figure is said to appear in the ruins, standing motionless in the exact spot where the mother's body was found. Down the street, an old two-story house sits empty, but neighbors say they see lights flickering and a child staring out the window at night, even though the house has no electricity. Another tale tells of a man who was murdered during a robbery on the sidewalk in the 1970s. His ghost now walks with a limp, appearing suddenly behind people before disappearing into the fog. A former church, now boarded up, is also the site of strange activity. Shadowy figures are seen pacing near the front doors, and a deep voice has been heard chanting when no one is inside. Near an alley, people have seen a ghostly woman in a red coat, running as if escaping danger. Witnesses say she turns the corner and vanishes without a sound. An apartment building at the end of Griffith Street is said to be cursed. Every tenant who moves in reports the same terrifying dream, a dark figure standing at the foot of their bed, breathing heavily. The dreams are so vivid that many move out within weeks. Lastly, an old street light that no longer works is believed to be haunted by a former city worker electrocuted while fixing it. On stormy nights, it flickers to life and then dies again, just as a shadow passes beneath it. With so many chilling encounters, Griffith Street remains a place of fear, where the dead seem unwilling to let go. Number 9. Sycamore Street in Pittsburgh. Sycamore Street in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, winds through the historic Mount Washington neighborhood and is known not just for its views of the city, but for the eerie spirits said to haunt it. Behind the quiet homes and old buildings, this street hides a series of chilling ghost stories that have made it one of the most feared in the region. Locals whisper of strange happenings that continue to this day, especially after dark. One of the most well-known stories involves a former boarding house where a jealous lover poisoned multiple tenants in the early 1900s. Today, neighbors report hearing coughing fits and screams late at night, along with flickering lights and shadows moving behind the windows of the long-abandoned building. Not far from there, an old Victorian home is haunted by a young woman who vanished before her wedding day. Her figure in a white gown has been seen descending the staircase, and the scent of her perfume lingers in the air without warning. A narrow alley off Sycamore Street is home to another ghost, a coal miner who died in a tunnel collapse. His ghost is seen dragging a pickaxe behind him, his face covered in soot, especially on foggy nights. One home on the street is said to have a poltergeist. Objects fly across rooms, glass breaks without cause, and strange voices whisper through the walls, repeating names no one recognizes. An elderly woman is often seen sitting in a rocking chair on a porch that's been vacant for years. Witnesses say she stares blankly and vanishes when approached. There's also a haunted playground nearby where swings move on their own, and a child's laughter echoes even when no one is present. Some believe a young boy who drowned in the nearby Monongahela River returns there to play. Perhaps the most terrifying story is of the black-eyed man. He's seen walking up Sycamore Street in the early hours of the morning, dressed in a dark coat with eyes that are completely black. People report feeling intense fear and cold whenever he passes, and some claim he tries to speak, but no sound ever comes out. With so many restless spirits tied to its tragic past, Sycamore Street remains one of Pittsburgh's most haunted and unnerving places.